Welcome to each of you this morning. Welcome to each of you perfect and beautiful souls, wherever you might be. Welcome to wherever you might be on life's journey today, whether it be physical or spiritual. Our mission at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Augusta is to create a beloved community, acting together with compassion, reason, and respect, empowering us to promote a just society. I can't think of anything, really, that deserves our loving intention more than living into that lofty vision. I'm Reverend Nick Filzen, and I'm joined today by worship host Chris Palmer and music director David Netjes. Obviously, we are only meeting virtually today, which couldn't be possible without the efforts of the folks on our tech team, Stephen Heil, Lynn Dennison, and Dan Cooper. Thank you to each of you. Though we are virtual, if you're visiting for the first time, you're of course welcome along with everyone else. Please consider joining us here in our beautiful sanctuary when we can safely return to hybrid worship. You can also stick around for a few minutes after the service today for some Zoom fellowship time if you feel comfortable doing so. I'd like to share a few community highlights with you this morning. The reopening team and I met yesterday and decided it would be best to remain virtual throughout January. We are tentatively going to return to hybrid on February 13th, pending hospitalization and positive test data available to us the previous week. This isn't ideal, I know. Certainly not for me, but certainly not for this community. But we want to make sure that we're not just responsible stewards of our faith community here at the UUCA, but also of our local community. Now, we were going to begin Soul Circles, our new small group ministry program, on January 27th, but the first meeting will now be on February 24th and go through June. Please stay tuned for more information. For now, we will still be holding an auction and talent show on Saturday, February 26th. This will be a time to come together and enrich each other's lives, both with donations, be they services, items, time, or money, as well as the talent within our church. And there's so much talent here. If you would like to participate in bringing this event to life, please contact Ray Randolph in person or on Realm. Speaking of Realm, our church-wide rollout continues. We're trying to move most of our communication to that platform to meet the needs expressed in listening circles. Even if you don't sign up, we will still be able to communicate to you through email from Realm, but you'll get far more out of the experience if you make an account on Realm. Think of it sort of like social media, without the fighting and disinformation. And visit the page frequently. Again, if you're only interacting with it through your existing email, it won't be as rewarding, and it might actually make it frustrating to use. Realm is an ongoing online fellowship hour which will amplify our community of communities. Now, may we fully connect to our breath. Our bodies and the ground. Engage each of our senses as fully as we can. What we feel, hear, see, smell, and even taste. And may we fully move into our time of worship with intention.
The dictionary defines intentional as done on purpose, deliberate. This meaning plays a role in what an intentional relationship is. It involves being active instead of passive and making things happen instead of waiting for them to happen to you. This type of relationship means not giving up when things get tough.
Please join me in singing our first hymn, number 352. If you have a great hymnal at home, Find a Stillness. Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
This is a time in our service when we share our joys and sorrows, and these will not be recorded, so please feel free to share.
There really is a lot going on right now that we can hold in our hearts, and my heart goes out to all of you who are feeling pain and grief at this moment. Today's story and song for all ages comes from a great Unitarian Universalist storyteller and songwriter, Liam Morris. Please enjoy Cricket and the Coin, And I hope you'll sing along with her when she sings her song, I Hear Life, when she's done with her story.
Let me tell you about the cricket and the coin. One day, a pair of cousins were taking a walk down a busy city street. Now, one of the cousins was what you would call a city slicker, someone who lived in and was used to the urban lifestyle. The other cousin was what some people refer to as a country bumpkin, someone who was more accustomed to the rural countryside way of living. But on this day, they found themselves together in a city. And as they were walking, if you've ever been in a city, you know the sounds, the sights, the impressions that are constantly bombarding the senses. It's a loud and exciting place to be. Horns, blaring, people shouting, construction taking place. And amidst all of that bustle, the country cousin said, "Ha, do you hear that? A cricket." The city cousin said, "No, cuz, no way. Listen, there's no way there are any crickets anywhere within a 20-mile radius of here. And even if there were, there's no way you could hear it over all the noise." The country cousin said, No, I hear it. There's definitely a cricket." And wouldn't you know, within a minute of continuing their walk, they found one of the few plants that was growing in the city. And there on its leaf was a little cricket singing its song. The city cousin was admittedly impressed and said, "Wow, this just goes to show you country people have great sense of hearing." But the country cousin wasn't so convinced. As a matter of fact, they thought it would be a good idea to launch an experiment to find out if it was really a matter of country people having better hearing. And so they pulled their change purse out and dropped a few coins on the sidewalk. The heads of every passerby turned toward the sound of the fallen coins. This story illustrates that we are more likely to notice things that we're used to noticing. So it's a good idea to pay attention to where we pay attention, to focus our intention and choose where we place our focus. And this story inspired this song. Are you listening to the falling leaves? Are you listening to the calling trees? Are you listening? What are you hear? Are you listening to the water dry? Are you listening to the lizards fly? Are you listening? What are you hear? What are you hear? I hear days come and go, and I hear babies growing. I hear clouds as they silently float by. I hear time as it's slowing, and one thing I know is I hear life. I hear life. is a new thing. You ought to give it a try. I hear vision becoming. I know that nothing is wanted. I hear life. I hear life. I hear life. I hear life.
Now is the time when we have to share our generosity. This is the time in our service that we can give back to our beloved community with true intentions to give generously. This collection is our second Sunday collection, where we give to help to support an organization that benefits our community. Any contributions you make to the plate will automatically go to our second Sunday this week, unless you mark differently on the new online giving form. The social justice team has chosen Georgia Appleseed. The mission of Georgia Appleseed is to increase justice in Georgia through law and policy reform and community engagement. To make giving easier, especially when we're meeting virtually, you can now have the ability to give through text or through a donate button on our website. This is another huge advantage of adopting Realm as our church-wide online hub. The information on how to donate these methods will be displayed on your screen as David plays the offertory. Please give generously. Thank you for your generosity.
There were two fundamental mantras throughout my ministerial training at the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara with Reverend Julia Hamilton. One was always consider context. The other, always be intentional. Interestingly, these two mantras were both intentional by Reverend Julia, and they emerged organically in our conversations all the time. Pretty much each conversation lasting more than a few moments. It got to a point that when it inevitably came up, we both cracked up. As we were paying close attention to how often these ideas appeared, it became a long, pragmatic, and meaningful inside joke. These two ideas, especially in our context, truly do permeate everything about our religious lives together. Because this month's theme is living with intention, today I'm going to focus on the second mantra, always be intentional. Depending on the context, I'm sure the other mantra will come up often too. Now, the main reason why intentionality was so important to Reverend Julia and now to me is because it can become a huge barrier against acting reactively. It's also a significant roadblock for anxiety. Living with intention is an important step in becoming a non-anxious presence, a very important characteristic for anybody who hopes to lead. Folks in leadership positions tend to exist at what's called a leverage point. For today's context, a leverage point is a person within a system who has a large degree of influence on that system. Since these folks are both at a leverage point and in a leadership position, let's call them LPs, not to be confused with vinyl records. If an LP spreads anxiety around a given system, it can be very insidious for an entire community because of an LP's outsized influence. To prevent this, a leader can use the shield of intentionality. I kind of like to say this like in a heroic cartoon of some kind. The shield of intentionality. But I digress. Acting with intention strengthens your ability to self-differentiate, to objectify and own your own emotions, and not allowing them to control you. And though emotions aren't bad at all, an emotional reaction nonetheless can often cause unintended harm to a friend, colleague, to the relationship itself, perhaps even to an entire system. Acting with intention makes it far less likely that you'll cause harm. I think of it kind of like an intentional walk in baseball. Hint, this will explain the image you may have seen in the e-announcement or newsletter for today's service. Now, if folks are sports nuts like me, you'll know that intentionally walking a batter in baseball can provide several benefits for the defense. It's most often used when a runner is on second base while first base is empty. For reasons unnecessary to explain right now, it's better for the defense if there's a runner on both bases. You're intentionally walking to mitigate harm. And another reason why you might intentionally walk a batter is if it's less likely they'll score from there than with a bat in their hands. When a batting behemoth like Barry Bonds stepped up to the plate, along with all the extra juice he brought along with him, pitchers often decided just to put him on base. That's how likely he was to produce runs with his bat. Intentional walking to mitigate harm. It was a well-timed siren there, right at the period of that sentence. Intentionality in our lives can mitigate harm. Interestingly, walking intentionally outside the baseball diamond can be a great spiritual practice to increase your capacity for intentionality and harm reduction. After the sermon today, we'll do a variation of this during our meditation time using the labyrinth I mailed to y'all earlier this week. Now, sometimes, even when we're intentional, we can cause harm. That's when the big conversation of intent versus impact comes in. If Barry Bonds still somehow managed to make impact with the ball and get a hit, or even a home run, while the pitcher was attempting to intentionally walk him, the damage has already been done. Unlikely, but possible. All you can do then is try to repair the damage, make amends, maybe score a few runs in the next inning, if we're keeping that analogy going. Impact far outweighs intent, but that's a sermon for another day. Being intentional with every action can also change you and rewire your brain, especially as you intentionally do things, see things, hear things that you wouldn't normally do. For example, I'm extremely right-handed. Several times recently, I've had to use my left hand for remedial tasks like writing or eating because I was experiencing some severe arthritis pain in my right wrist. It's too much basketball over the years. Now, each time I had to do this, Janaea reminded me that doing so was an opportunity to rewire my brain. To force myself to use my left hand and absolutely have to do it intentionally because there's no way that my muscle memory will take over. Now, of course, Janaea's dose of good news had no impact on the pain I was experiencing in my right hand. Although we're shaped as humans based on all our actions and interactions, over which we have little control, you do have some serious agency in that process. Our Unitarian ancestor, Ralph Waldo Emerson, you may have heard of him, has a wonderful quote about this using the language worship. The definition of that word that I use comes directly from him. To worship means to shape that which has worth. Emerson says, quote, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will come out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming." End quote. Each of us has worth and dignity. We shape that which has worth. With intentionality, we shape ourselves. Modern author and spiritual leader Deepak Chopra agrees. Quote, "Conscious change is brought about by the two qualities inherent in consciousness, intention and attention. Whatever you put your intention on will grow stronger in your life. Whatever you take your intention away from will wither, disintegrate, and disappear." End quote. Now, the idea of always being intentional didn't just come up with Reverend Julia. One of the more rewarding and honestly pragmatic courses during seminary was called Intro to Pastoral Care, taught by Reverend Julie Taylor. The bulk of that course was spent discussing how to offer pastoral care in a crisis. Typically, pastoral care often requires directly naming emotions, validating them, traveling with them instead of trying to set them aside. Yet, when you're in crisis, especially after significant trauma or even a crisis of faith, when you're experiencing a tidal wave of adrenaline and cortisol, when the ground beneath you feels like it's miles away, you can easily fall into an emotional tailspin. The most immediate goal then for a caregiver who's trying to help you is to get you to move from your feelings to your thinking. Sometimes this can be a matter of life and death. As a caregiver, it's paramount to avoid getting pulled into that emotional tailspin, especially possible in crisis. This can happen in any pastoral care or therapeutic context. A phenomenon called transference and countertransference. I know, big words, I'm sorry. I'll try to explain them as simply as I can. Transference is when you take on the emotions of the care seeker. Perhaps their situation brings up a similar story in your own life, and all those old emotions kind of rush to the surface. Countertransference is when your emotions that popped up, and then you unintentionally give them back to the care seeker. This only makes the care seeker's already emotional tailspin even more destructive, dangerous. Important as that information may be, it's less important for today than what to do to prevent it from happening. When you become aware of your own emotions starting to take over, Reverend Julie suggested that you use another mantra. Think, don't feel, where are my feet right now? Think, don't feel, where are my feet right now? This immediately puts you back into your thinking brain and grounds you. Literally, you're reminding yourself of your connection to the ground. And a grounded caregiver is far more effective in providing grounding for somebody who feels like they're losing it. Once again, when discussing intentionality, we return to our relationship with the ground. Intentional walking, whether it be with our feet or not, there's something about being connected to the ground in an intentional way that solves so many things, has so much healing potential, so much liberating potential. Intentionally letting gravity do its thing instead of fighting against it, being in harmony with the world that sustains us. Noticing how our relationship changes each step to that world. It's such a great way to practice intentionality, which hopefully will radiate throughout your lives. And before we practice this today in a way in which hopefully everyone can participate, regardless of ability, I'll close this reflection with a few short words from St. Paul in his letter to the Ephesians. Sleeper, awake, rise from the dead, and Christ's nature will shine from you. Be careful then how you live, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of the time. Awaken to the world, friends. Be intentional, and may you experience your whole and holy life with joy. Earlier this week, I sent out paper labyrinths to everyone, at least in our directory. I sincerely apologize if you didn't receive it or if we missed you. If you didn't receive it or if you don't have enough for your whole family, you may also use the labyrinth we're about to share on your screen. If using the image on the screen, I only suggest that you disable your device's touchscreen, if possible, and I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Or collect the paper if you don't have it next to you. If you're able, carefully walking in a circle around the room you're in is more than okay too. Go ahead. Now, as you look at your labyrinth, and you see the entrance, before you enter, start by taking some deep breaths to help bring focus and relax. Sometimes, in a different context, you can find a poem or meditation or even scripture, whatever that means to you, that you would like to focus on for your walk. But today, I really like to focus on your relationship with the page or ground, if you're choosing to walk. Now, as you enter the labyrinth or start your circle around your room, when you slowly and intentionally walk. I'm using my two fingers with which I'm going to walk to do quotes around that. And you'll use two fingers, just as you might walk a labyrinth. You can move at your own speed. Every step you take, silently name, or even say it out loud if you'd like, that you're breathing in or out. Name that step in or out as you follow your breath. Don't control your breath, just follow it. And at the same time, pay special attention to how your fingers feel on the page or the screen or your feet on the ground. Notice the gravity that gently pulls them down toward the earth. Relish in that relationship with the ground or page. How do your fingers or feet feel with each next move? If your mind moves away from this relationship or from your breath, celebrate that you noticed your mind wandering and gently come back to that relationship. Once you reach the center, take time to relax. Notice the world. If you hear something that catches your attention, silently say, "Here." If you see something, say, "See." If you notice how you feel or something feels on you, like your clothes, or if for some reason there's air that brushes against your cheek from a fan, or if you're outside, you can say, "Feel." Now, if you've reached the center and you've gotten what you needed out of that moment there, retrace your way, walk back out of the labyrinth, again at your own pace. Come back to your breath and your relationship with the ground or page if you need to. Breathe, relax, and consider how you are feeling now when you have moved out of the labyrinth. And if you're not quite there yet, I'll give you a few more moments before we move into our final hymn. Please join me in singing hymn number 348, if you have the great hymnal at home, "Guide My Feet." Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Race in vain. Today's benediction is written by Reverend Scott Taylor, who curates our Soul Matters packets that we use throughout our church services and other events each month. And the title of this benediction is The Daring of Our Intentions. May we dare to live from the center of our being. May we make our own choices before others' choices make us. May the fire that burns in our belly light our way. May our collective intention make the world shine anew. Blessed be. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come